Hey guys, Hudson here with Father and Sons Investing, and there's been a few new developments with Hyliion that I thought I should talk about. I think that Hyliion at this point is kind of at the cusp of a big surge. Now I don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow or if it's going to happen next year, but I think now is the time to get in if you're thinking about it. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but as a truck driver and having spoken with other fellow truck drivers that do long haul driving, I don't do long haul, I do heavy equipment just locally, but I think that by far Hyliion is the best solution, even over Tesla. And the reason I say that is with the technology they have, which basically involves putting in a generator under the hood where an engine normally would go, that generates the electricity to recharge a battery. That's going to be a better solution because as a result of taking that approach, you don't need as big of a battery pack. And the problem with an all-electric semi-truck is to have any range at all to speak of, hauling 80,000 pound loads, which is the typical total weight of the vehicle with the load when you're hauling with a semi. You need a huge battery pack to drag that, push that kind of weight around. However, with a Hyliion solution, with the generator that's constantly refurbishing the battery's energy as it's needed on demand, well, then you don't need as much weight in the battery pack, and the weight of the generator is far less than what the weight of a battery pack would be that would achieve that same range. I mean, if you had a battery pack with the same range with an 80,000 pound vehicle to match the range that Hyliion has with the generator setup, which is about 1,300 miles, the battery pack would be so big, guys, that you wouldn't have hardly any room left for any payload. And it just becomes a moot point. There's not going to be a way to make money with a truck that's set up that way with such a large battery pack. That's why the Tesla truck only has, I think, 500 miles of range. They have to keep the weight of the truck itself with the batteries and everything down to a certain point. Once you go above a certain point, you lose so much payload, it's not a profitable setup. So that's one thing that a lot of investors just don't understand because they've never driven truck, they're not exposed to that field, and just don't really understand how it works. And basically the way it works is you start with the base weight of your truck and trailer, and that may come in at 25,000 pounds or so. My mom's waving at me through the glass sliding door here. Anyway, so let's just say your truck and trailer is 25,000 pounds, and you're allowed a total of 80,000 pounds. So that leaves you, 55,000 pounds of payload. Well, if you add a battery pack to this equation that is going to have the range of 1,300 miles, you may end up with a 70,000 pound truck and trailer before you even load it. I mean, I don't know. I'm just putting that out there as a number. But it gets to a point where the weight of that battery pack takes up most of your payload. So I really do believe Hyliion has the best solution for long-haul trucking. I'm not saying Tesla doesn't have a great solution, but their solution is going to be good for about 500 miles or less. And there's a lot of trucks on the road that need to do that much a day and more. The Hyliion solution has a 1,300 mile range. It has just as much torque to the ground. It has, far more range, and the compressed natural gas is not really an issue. If you have a 1,300-mile range, you're going to be able to find compressed natural gas station to fill up at. Whereas, say for example, Nikola, who is looking to go with hydrogen, there is just basically no infrastructure for that at this time. And there's not going to be, guys, for another probably 10 years. If ever. I just don't know if hydrogen really will become a viable player in this field anytime soon. I think it probably will, but it could take 10, maybe 20 years, because to build a hydrogen station is far more costly than to build a electrical recharging station or a natural gas station. So other things that nobody's really talked about. I've listened to a couple videos just recently put out, one by JMac Investing. Jason over there does a really good job talking about Hyliion. And another guy, 18 Wheel, I think it's called 18 Wheel Investor. Kenny is his name. He's brought up some really good points about Hyliion and why they're a good solution. And he is a long-haul trucker. So there's a guy right there that is kind of on the same wavelength as I am, speaking from experience. And he's speaking from experience as a long-haul trucker, so I think it's a really valid viewpoint that people need to pay attention to him. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. It's 18 Wheel Investor, I believe it is, or 18 Wheeler Investor. And of course, J-Mac, he's been around for a while. He's got some great points as well. But another thing nobody's really talked about is the fact that with these big rigs, the braking is always an issue. It's one thing to get this load moving down the road. I mean, it's not hard to get an 80,000-pound load rolling. What's hard is stopping it, especially when you're in the Rocky Mountains or up in an area like I live in. I live near Yosemite National Park. It's all mountainous terrain here, and when you're pulling a heavy load, you know, what's on my mind is not getting this load moving. What's on my mind is making sure I hit the gears right coming down the hills, using my Jake brakes, and that way I'm not burning up my brakes at the bottom of the hill and have, you know, brakes fading out and no ability to stop. And the beauty of these electrical setups, or EV trucks and the hybrid truck like Hyliion, is they're using basically a retarder. I believe, I'm just guessing now, but I'm assuming they're using electrical retarder setup on the driveline, which is like a giant alternator, kind of wired in reverse, so it puts a lot of drag on the truck and slows the truck down. And they're using that as well to regenerate power back to the battery system. So not only is it helping slow the truck down and making it a much safer truck to be on the road because it's able to manage the weight better on a downhill slope, but it's also putting power back into the battery. And for these trucks, that's important, you know, to make use of every opportunity to put power back into the battery pack. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but I've driven trucks with Jake brakes. In fact, I use Jake brakes every day. And I have driven a few trucks that had the electrical retarder driveline on the driveline. And I'll tell you what, guys, those electrical retarders, man, they really have the ability to slow the truck down and hold that weight back. They're fantastic. And Jake brakes can only do so much. I believe that the electrical retarding system is a safer and better setup. Now imagine you probably overuse that as well, just like you can your brakes, and it might catch fire. But you know, if a driver knows what he's doing, uses his gears correctly, and engages that retarding system on and off coming down the hill, and doesn't just leave it on constantly, or I mean, I don't know. Maybe they've improved these retarding systems enough to where heat's not so much an issue anymore, especially if they're taking that energy and putting it into a battery pack. It may not be nearly as much of an issue with heat. So I think that's another big plus to this system, is the fact that it's going to be safer coming down the long stretches of downhill grades. But yeah, guys, if you've ever seen a truck lose its brakes and the brakes are on fire and they're going down the hill out of control, they've still got their jakes on, but they can only do so much holding that truck back. And it's either they use a runaway ramp to keep from hurting anybody, or they just ride it to the bottom and hope that nobody gets in their way. And that's important for you guys to know that are out there driving these mountains in your cars. You are in front of a big rig coming down that grade. Give yourself plenty of distance between that trucker and yourself. A lot of times these guys, you think they're riding your butt to be a jerk. They're riding your butt because their brakes are fading out. You need to get the hell away from them. And so keep that in mind and be courteous. Give these truckers a wide berth, because it can be really, really stressful when you're coming down off these grades. Especially if you see any smoke coming out of their wheels, get away from them. Give them the wide berth. Give them some room to maneuver, so they can do something if they need to try to get control. And then the other thing too, guys, is I don't know, there wasn't much of a deal made about this, but Hyliion just recently announced that their battery technology is only going to take 8 minutes to recharge. That's incredible. I mean, that's less time than it takes to fill up with diesel fuel for a big rig. So this whole idea of range anxiety and how long it takes to fill up or recharge your battery anxiety, it's just not an issue anymore, especially with the Hyliion setup. And it's been interesting because I've been watching the stock now for a while, and it's gone clear up into the 40s or maybe even low 50s, and then dropped right back down. And heck, we're at like $10.30 I think this morning. It's just crazy how low it is. And it brought back to mind something I heard Kathy Wood say at ARK Invest a while back about Tesla. And it was something to the effect that the longer a company like this kind of stays in the doldrums and trades sideways, which Hyliion's been doing now for a while, the longer that happens before it takes off, usually the bigger the explosion is in the growth of the stock. So I think this stock really is setting itself up to be a high growth play here in the next year or two, and certainly in the next 5 or 10 years. So in my opinion, at $10.30 per share this morning, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there doing Hyliion videos saying anything under 20 bucks is a steal. Well, we're at half that right now. I just bought a couple of hundred more shares this morning, and so I'm sitting at 1,500 shares now. And as far as in the trucking industry, with the announcements that Hyliion's come out with about their battery, and now their consortium of different companies coming together to help them make this all happen, and I'll talk more about that on another video, but it was a big announcement. Along with the other benefits of this system, I just can't see how this is not going to take off. And one more thing I wanted to talk about is, if you look at the contrast between Trevor Milton, who was not shy at all about hyping his company, as it turns out a little bit too much, making a lot of statements that were very questionable. You contrast that with a guy like Thomas Healy, who's the president and CEO of Hyliion. It, to me, is just a no-brainer. I feel far more comfortable putting my money behind a guy like Thomas, who's been very humble, been very careful not to make overstatements, and very careful not to make promises he can't keep. And I think that really shows when you listen to him speak. He just seems like a guy who doesn't want to mislead at all. And in fact, they just asked him on an interview the other day what he felt the upside was. And he really wouldn't say other than he felt it was a long-term play, and that, you know, he felt positive about it. So if you ask that same question to Trevor Milton back when he was still a part of the company and before the whole thing blew up with the Hindenburg report, he would have had no problem just going on and on and on about all the great technology they have and how they're the leaders and the innovators in this field. And, you know, as it turned out, that wasn't necessarily true. So if we have time, maybe we can put some contrasting, you know, videos up showing the contrast between both Thomas and Trevor. And it's pretty interesting. So with that, guys, I don't want to get this video too long, but I'm gonna sign out of here. But you know, and don't listen to me, don't make decisions based on what I'm telling you, do your own research. But I really do believe that Hyliion is going to be the Tesla of the trucking industry, at least as far as long haul trucks are concerned. And it's going to take a little time, but I think it's all pretty well destined to happen. So check it out, give me your comments below, let me know what you think, and I hope this helps you. God bless. Talk to you soon.